Hugh Osmond is the founder of Punch Taverns and has long campaigned against lockdowns and the shutting down, in particularly of hospitality, for many months on end. Good morning to you, Hugh.
Morning. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. There are lots and lots and lots of different stories about. We were talking about this earlier with Brendan Chilton. Stuff about planning reforms and social care and education. And when you talk about all these things, you think, well, yes, there are other things that happen other than COVID and lockdowns. But actually, when you have a lockdown policy that is damaging so much in education, in our freedoms, our economy, our business, in a way, all of these other stories pale into insignificance when we are still in a state of lockdown, still with our economy and lots of it sort of in aspect. The Prime Minister yesterday said England's on track for the end of lockdown on the 19th of July. Once again, he used this phrase, the terminus. And then, of course, within moments, he was asked if he would rule out the prospect of further lockdowns in the winter. And he said, you can never exclude that there will be some new disease, some new horror that we simply haven't budgeted for or accounted for. But looking at where we are, the efficacy of the vaccines against all variants that we can currently see, I think it's looking good for 19th of July to be that terminus point. But that the country could be in for a rough winter for all sorts of reasons. Yesterday was supposed to be Freedom Day. It wasn't. Do you think 19th of July will be Freedom Day? And how long do you think that freedom will last?
Well, I just don't think we can make any predictions anymore about how the government will behave. I mean, we are now one of the most vaccinated countries in the world, and yet one of the most restricted. And the reason for that is obviously not any variants or any such thing. It is that we're also one of the most scared countries. And that is because the government has spent, 300-400 million scaring us deliberately. And so now you've got a very scared population. You've got a very scared government. And this is 100% the reason that we're still locked down. And the idea that this is, now a free country is becoming kind of ridiculous. It's very difficult. I mean, there's no medical justification. There's no justification in the data, the medicine, the virus, the variants, the numbers, the vaccine for us to be locked down. As I say, it is just a matter of fear and timidity and things like that. So it's very difficult to predict what may happen when you've got people this fearful.
And we have yet again seen the revelation, as always happens, a week after the event, we see the data and the modelling that was used by the government and by the advisors to tell the Prime Minister that we needed to stay in lockdown and not come out because of, basically because everyone's going to die because of the new Indian variant. We've since known, I mean, again, there's accusations that Matt Hancock, the health secretary, and I don't know why everyone thinks it's just him. Clearly, Vallance and Whitty would have known this data as well. And if not, why not? That actually the Indian variant is not causing is not as unaffected by vaccines as we were previously told and scaremongered about. Up to 96% protection from Pfizer, I think 92 from AstraZeneca, and most of that comes from the first jab. We were told it had to be the second jab. Yet again, we're told a new variant, terribly, terribly, terribly dangerous, terribly transmissible, not affected by the jabs. And each time when we have this with the new variant, we gradually discover that those things are massively overblown. But we've also had a chance now yesterday to see the models used. The Warwick model used to justify the delay of the 21st of June lockdown, unlocking, are so... I mean, they are so awful and so shocking. When I looked at this, I thought this must be a joke. But basically, the models are so off the scale inaccurate that they are absolutely laughable. Their predictions for people going into hospital admissions currently are 68% of the modelled scenario, and beds occupied are 53% of the modelled scenario. Deaths, of course, far, far, far below that. They were out by such an order of magnitude, and that was on their best case scenario, not even their average scenario. Should we be dumping the modelling, first of all?
You shouldn't be asking me. I mean, look, I've spent quite a lot of boring time in my life looking at models modelled by far higher caliber people than any of the people you're talking about, and they're still... they're only a very small part of the toolkit for any type of prediction scenario. I mean, all predictions of the future are highly unsound. Mankind's been trying to do predictions of the future since they gazed at the moon and the stars and had human sacrifices and goat's entrails and so forth.
Yeah.
It's an impossible thing. So models are all they do is model scenarios. Unfortunately, a lot of the Warwick and Imperial and so forth, they still actually believe in the fundamental concept that the growth is exponential of this disease. And it does look like exponential in the early days, but actually they appear to have fundamentally misunderstood that it follows a different type of function. I'm not going to get technical now, but it's a logistic function.
Yeah, I'd like to point out, people, you do have a medical background, hence and a technical background on this. So
sort of medical and maths background. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, be that as it may, so the models have been wrong from the start, but at the moment, they're absolutely egregiously wrong because they took sort of massive wrong positions on the efficacy of vaccines and the hospitalization rates of not only those vaccinated, but unvaccinated. Yeah. And one of the problems with complex models is that if you introduce a number of small errors, or what looks like small errors, 5-10% vaccine efficacy, they all multiply together and you end up with forecasts that can be wrong by a factor of 20. And so it doesn't sound very harmful, but even tiny errors can lead to these huge variations. And we could see, 3 weeks ago that the models were already veering off the real data by so far that the error was going to be, the error was going to be orders of magnitude. And in fact, if the disease, if we were all allowed to go out and run around and do what we wanted, the errors of the models would still be like factors of 5 or 10, and that would probably be their best case scenario.
But the reality is, I mean, if I tossed a coin, I'd have a more accurate chance of predicting the right thing. I mean, the Imperial College model, as pointed out in the Telegraph today, forecast almost 204,000 deaths over the next year, based on assuming efficacy of these vaccinations in preventing hospitalizations as between 77 and 87%, and as it is, it's between 92 and 96%. That cuts their forecast of deaths by extraordinary, gobsmacking 90% to just under 27,000 deaths. Now, 27,000 deaths is still a lot of deaths, but in the big scheme of things, of the roughly 650,000 deaths that we have every year in this country, it is not, and it's not. It wouldn't be an unusual, shocking flu year of deaths either. And this is the thing, isn't it? If the Prime Minister's not been given all the facts about the effectiveness of the vaccine, if he's looking at models which are coming from Warwick and Imperial and elsewhere, which have been proven to be wrong many, many times before, the assumptions proven to be wrong, the assumptions contained within those models already known to be faulty because we've already seen data in the real world that proves that they are not any way at all predicting what's going on. How on earth are we ever going to come out of this? Because it's quite clear, and I've heard from Cabinet Ministers who said to me, it's the Prime Minister basically makes a decision based on what the last person in the room told him. This is one of the big criticisms of Donald Trump, that, you just had to be the last person who spoke to him at night, but that was how you got your policy through. This is what is happening. He is surrounded. It's Michael Gove. I don't know why Michael Gove keeps getting such a free ride on this. He's chairing every committee. He's involved in every single decision. It's Michael Gove, Matt Hancock, Chris Whitty and Patrick Vance. And they are the people who influence the Prime Minister. No one else gets a look in. Rishi Sunak, apparently, as a chancellor, long ago gave up trying to argue against lockdowns because he knew he was always outgunned by the double act of Hancock and Gove. But if the Prime Minister's only hearing from these people and he's not hearing from alternative viewpoints based in the real world, we're going to be doing this forever.
Yes, and I don't know if you followed the story, Julia, and I can't. I'm absolutely not an expert and don't know anything about this. But did you read that what they're saying, that 1.5 million children under 5 are now suffering from this kind of lockdown, post-lockdown lock-in syndrome?
1.5 million children are going to need mental health treatment. Children as young as 5 having panic attacks when they see when they're around other people or see adults, because of course they've not seen adults, not seen children, seen only adults in their face masks. I mean, what have we done to our country?
Yeah, and I think that's where the damage is going to emerge, maybe more slowly than the effects of the immediate effects of people going into hospital. But if it's 1.5 million children, being put through this for the sake of what? And then you've got the young people coming out of school, coming out of university, looking for jobs. You've got what's happened to them in universities and stuff. And that is in the name of what? as I said, we're the most vaccinated and the least open, or one of the most vaccinated and one of the least open in the world. All of America is properly open. Italy is now more open than we are. France is more open than we are. This is an epidemic of fear, and it's being created by this government. And as you said, Boris Johnson exhibiting this cushion syndrome, where the last person who sat on him leaves the biggest impression. You can't run a country like that. At some point, the politicians have got to say, we frightened these people. We frightened 67 million people with an advertising and media campaign that was specifically designed to terrorize them. Now we've got a very frightened population, and this is very worrying because we're affecting our children. And potentially, for God's sake, our children's children, if we carry on like this much longer. We have to do something about it. They have to show some leadership. They have to look at, not at models, but they have to look at actual data. Yeah. And there's another small thing, which is the initial data that said the Indian variant was 2.5 times more likely to put people into hospital. That is utterly, utterly bogus. I've looked at the data. It might be slightly lower than the existing variants, or it might be about the same. The idea that it can be 2.5 times is utterly mathematically impossible. I
spoke to a very senior Oxford University professor about this on Saturday, who also shared that view. Just finally, I must ask you just briefly, if you would, there's possibility that we are going to get some foreign travel without quarantine over the summer, possibly in August. I'm assuming to the places where the likes of Hancock and the civil servants who help with all this actually choose to go on holiday themselves. But ending the quarantine for people with 2 jabs, but not for people without 2 jabs. Very nice for me. I've already had my 2 jabs. Not so good for my team who are in their 20s who wouldn't be able to benefit from that. We're going to create a 2-tier society. Is that wrong?
It's completely wrong. I mean, I don't know what you do about it. I think that when the vulnerable have been vaccinated, which they were, months ago now, when the vulnerable classes are vaccinated, restrictions should be eased. Freedom is not a thing that should be done by halves. You can't be a little bit free any more than you can be a little bit pregnant. The fundamental basis of the UK and free countries are that you are free except for a certain number of restrictions that are designed, speed limits. You might disagree with them, but you are free as long as you don't speed, because you might hurt someone. The idea that you are restricted with a small amount of things that you are allowed to do, you are imprisoned or restricted with things that you're allowed to do, that is just fundamentally the wrong way around. They need to go back to, to freedom with a very, perhaps a tiny number of things that we keep monitoring on, which would only be for the very, very vulnerable. We should be allowed to be free to travel, to go to hospitality, to live our lives without these constraints, and try and get rid of this terrible fear that still grips a large part of the population.
Hugh Osmond, founder of Punch Taverns, thank you very much.